have institutions in this country who are not releasing information as requested through the right processes, and for that matter, they are using our money to pay fines. I don't understand. And this morning we have that conversation here on the show. I'm very happy because we have the head of legal department at the RTI Commission join us here in the studio. And you also have Kweku Krobi-Asante, the program manager for independent journalism projects at the Media Foundation for West Africa, with us here in the studio. There are lots of institutions that have used our taxpayers' money to pay fines, and they've still not released the information. Now, in our quest for accountability, in our quest to get Ghana work better, how do we deal with these institutions? And who should suffer these actions? Should we use our taxes to pay, or the people at these institutions should be made to pay should be made to pay the fines for their inaction? There's a lot coming up this morning, but before we get into the conversation, let me take you back to the saga over RTI, which we aired in September 2025. I want to give you a short excerpt of that so you get a picture of what has happened, what is happening, and why we must do better when it comes to the right to information.
Implementation of the Right to Information RTI law began. The purpose was to make access to information easier. The RTI law is beneficial to citizens because it allows them to demand information about happenings around them that impacts their lives. Now, Corruption Watch investigations have uncovered that some key governance institutions which should be promoting access are refusing or failing to comply with the law by denying access to information requested by citizens. This refusal or failure to provide the requested information has led to the imposition of fines by the RTIC. The records show that as of the 16th of July 2025, the RTIC had imposed penalties of approximately 5.6 million Ghana cedis in 76 determinations involving 64 separate institutions. So far, 23 erring institutions have paid approximately 3.5 million cedis as penalties to the RTIC for breaking the law. Yet, a further 36 separate institutions owe the RTIC a combined total amount of 2,149,000 cedis in unpaid penalties. The figure is exclusive of interests that have accrued on some of the fines that have been imposed. In addition, the value of penalties does not include those that are being litigated in court. The Executive Secretary of the RTIC stresses that the fines imposed do not serve as a substitute for the information that is imposed to be released to an applicant.
A fine is never a substitute for information being. Once you are compelled to pay the administrative penalty, it does not automatically erase the fact that you have to provide the information. Providing the information becomes mandatory, it becomes a directive of the Commission, which needs to be complied with. For the imposition of the penalty is as a result of your default. So the penalty we will collect, all right, and then we will ensure that you provide the information being requested.
Meanwhile, the list of violators of the law is long and includes oversight bodies such as the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, SHRAJ, which is yet to pay a fine of 30,000 cedis. The Judicial Service of Ghana, also yet to pay a fine of 100,000 cedis. The Attorney General's Department, also yet to pay a fine of 50,000 cedis. The Public Procurement Authority, PPA, also yet to pay a fine of 100,000 cedis. The Ghana Police Service, which has paid 450,357 cedis. The Ghana Audit Service, which has paid 60,000 cedis, and the Parliamentary Service, which has paid 53,785 cedis.
The gap between account and the job.
So you heard that institutions like SHRAJ, Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice, even SHRAJ, are the people we go to when we are wronged to get our wrongs righted. Even SHRAJ. Anyway, I have Stephen Osu, head of legal of the department of the head of the legal department at the RTI Commission, and also Kweku Krobia Asante, program manager for Independent Journalism Project at the Media Foundation for West Africa. Kweku is on phone, and if you follow the work of Media Foundation for West Africa, they've done a lot of work on exposing corruption and getting the right things done when it comes to accountability. We are told that some of the institutions are yet to release information to them. And Kweku is here to shed more light on that. Kweku, good morning.
Morning, Kojo. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. How are you this morning?
I'm doing fine. How about you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for joining us. We understand that you have difficulty accessing requested information from a lot of institutions, even after the RTI Commission has ruled in your favor. What's happening? What's really the issue?
Well, thank you very much, Kojo, and my regards to your listeners, and then a special one to Stephen, who's in the studios. I think that it's becoming a norm now that for many public institutions, their appreciation of the law is that when they are fined, they tend not to therefore give the information. And this is from our experience. Most of the cases where the commission have had to finally give a determination, which is like ordering the public institutions to pay some fine, we don't get the information back. And it traces way back to 2021, through to this current year, 2026. Only a handful of them really go through the route to say, okay, here is the information. And so our first experience started with the Ghana National Fire Service, for instance. We requested information about very important incidents in our Ghanaian history. Kojo, if you remember, the atomic junction explosion.
Yep, the gas explosion.
The gas explosion. We requested information from them that to say, we see the report that was finally put together when you did your investigation. What can we learn from it as a country? What happened at Circle, the GRA office that got burned? Mm-hmm. We also requested that data to say, could you share the information with us? At the time, the Ghana National Fire Service argument was that the information had third parties involved, which is to say people who are not party to our request for information, and so they may be breaching some data standards. And so they couldn't give the information to us. We petitioned the commission. In the commission's rules, they are able to request to see that information and then verify independently and make a determination. And in that determination, they indeed said that what we were requesting for, and this is under the fourth estate, was a matter of public interest. The public needed to know what was really the cause of what happened at the atomic gas explosion at GRA. What lessons can the country or citizens take from it? And so even though you say you have third party there, what we have seen does not show that you cannot give the information out. And so release the information. In fact, in that determination, they did not even respond to the commission. And so the commission had to fine them 50,000. Right. This was the determination finally came somewhere January 5, 2022. And they released partial information to us, which was we asked them about their tenders, the number of cars they have, because often you hear people complain, the fire service arrived at the scene and they didn't have water in the car. So we wanted to have information. Those ones they were able to give to us. But the report on the gas explosions and all that, until now, which is like 4 years later, we have not been given the information. They were fined 50,000 in January 5, with interest for every 14 days. If we are to do the calculations today, that would be a lot of money. We didn't receive that information. The Ghana Police Service was fined in February 2022, 50,000. We did not receive the information.
What information were you seeking from the Ghana Police Service?
I think it was about some cases of attacks where one man was killed and some people in the community was also attacked. We request a lot of information from the Ghana Police Service that they don't even respond. But a number of those human rights abuses and things like that we were keen to follow up on, that we didn't get the information. We went to the Ministry of Education at some point. And then the current one that we're dealing with is the National Service Authority. When we were doing the investigations on the NSS scandal, the Bosnian scandal, we wrote to them to give us access to some specific information. In fact, even the data we were requesting was just a breakdown, a mathematical, statistical breakdown of how many people have been paid over the period, the number of service personnel that they have deployed. They didn't give us that information. The commission made a determination last year around March 2025 in there, and then that was about 50,000. Then last 2 months in March, the commission did a calculation of the 50,000 with the interest that accrue every 14 days and came to the value of 159,000. But as we sit today, we have not received the information. You see.
Do you, in your work, do you feel that these institutions are deliberately withholding the information from you, or sometimes you see that maybe they don't have the technical capacity to actually work on the information you're asking for? For example, Ghana National Fire Service, atomic fire, maybe at the time it happened, they didn't have the capacity to actually determine, assess, and know what really happened. So as we speak, they actually don't know, and they can't tell you they don't know out of some, so they won't just release information. Do you feel that
when
case?
the incident happened, if you recall, they set up a committee, and it's in the practice of the fire
Yes,
service, when
I
an
remember
explosion that big happens, they do their investigations. In fact, later people were even passing rumors that there was a Chitinga seller, who didn't turn off the fire and things like that. And, people were denying it here and there. It is not something, it's not information the National Fire Service. These are information that, in fact, if they do not have, then we should be very worried as a country. That incidents like this, they are not able to sit down and do the investigation. And I do not in any way doubt that they don't have it. They are just not willing to release the information to a journalist or a media house who are likely to make a report out of it. And in most instances, that is our experience. That they have the information, they are not comfortable giving it out to a media house, much less the full test it, because they know that these guys are going to do some analysis and put the information out there.
Are there other institutions you are dealing with that are still giving you challenges and have not released the information to you in your work?
Oh yes, we have the Ghana East Municipal Assembly. I think the request was about a dumping site that had been given out to a private developer, so that we were building housing projects on there. The citizens were raising concerns that the person who had been given that thing was somebody who was connected to the chief executive at the time. And we hear the suspicion was that it was an affiliate or an acquaintance of a sort, and he was not taking into consideration some environmental situations that the people felt needed to be taken care of. So we wrote to them to say, could we see a copy of the contract that was signed, so that we'll know who the beneficiary was, what were the details of the contract, how much money are we looking at, and perhaps the parameters that is going into the work that needed to be done. Up until today, we have not received that.
Wow.
The Ghana Education Service, this was in 2023. we were also requesting, I think it was about the COVID-19 issues as well. And the 2023 date, which is February, is when the commission makes its determination. But we would have requested like 3, 4, 5, 6 months. The one of the challenges the commission faces is making determinations very early.
Yeah.
So we would have requested somewhere around 2022 early. I think it was about the fumigation processes, that almost every government institution or ministry was fumigating, even though the district assemblies, municipal assemblies had also had contracts with a known firm to fumigate. So we wanted details on it. And this is not information that you will say they don't have.
Yeah.
Right? They are just not willing to release the information to you because they know that when you have the information, that is pushing the frontiers of transparency, and you're going to call them to account. They cannot provide answers because they are not comfortable about what has gone on, with those deals. So we have Ghana Education Service, Ghana East Municipal Assembly, the National Service Authority I have mentioned, the Ministry of Education, even though later they released the Ghana Police Service, the Ministry of Health as well.
You've done a lot of work on Ministry of Finance, for example, the SML related stuff. There were things that you had a role to play in. Did the ministry release information you requested?
Yes, they did, but often they would have to drag their feet to a certain point, and then by the time you so this is how the practice has been. You request, they will not respond. Then sometimes you try to do an internal appeal to the minister, then they see that, look, you are willing to take the information forward, then they will release the information to you. Sometimes not in the way you may have requested it or how you want the information, but they have responded anyway. In all fairness, with the SML deal, they provided to understand the information we needed.
How do you think the situation can be resolved to aid in your work as an accountability institution?
I think that we must look at the payment system. And in fact, maybe what you should ask Stephen for us to know is if these institutions have come through to pay the money. So, for instance, the National Service Authority, have they paid 159,285 cedis they are owing now? Our experience has been that they are not even paying the money. And when we had followed up, the commission was trying to get a garnishee order that could freeze accounts so that they could make, they could take the monies and all that. But that's another conversation. I think that we need to make it penalizing enough. If I am the CEO or the MD and you find us because I am not paying from my coffers or it is not affecting my performance, really, we could use the organization's money to pay and nobody really feels the pain. If this is the amount that we need to pay so that, a certain shady deal or some suspicious transaction that has gone on, will not be put out, that will make the government unpopular, then maybe we might as well accept a 30,000 fine or 50,000 fine and pay. I remember a few years ago, we met the Ministry of Information in a presentation, and they had told us that they were going to tie the request or how institutions comply with the access to information to the KPIs of the government institutions, the ministries, the agencies, so that as a CEO, as an MD, as a minister, one of the means of measuring your impact was that you had complied with the right to information law. And so I think that we should make it penalizing for the people who have the power to release the information, so that when they do not do that, they can immediately feel the pinch. Else, the way we are having it, if it may continue like that, we may not see any changes.
Kweku, thank you so much for joining us this morning here on Corruption Watch on the Super Morning Show. Kweku Krobia Sante is the program manager for Independent Journalism Project at the Media Foundation for West Africa. And they are one of the institutions that is really using the media to hold people in office accountable and institutions accountable. And I applaud the great work they've done over the years and what is even yet to come. But in the studio, we have Stephen Osu. Stephen is the head of legal department at the RTI Commission. Mr. Osu, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Kojo.
I hope all is well.
Yeah, by God's grace, and you?
Yes, I'm good. The other Stephen Osu I know was my sign language teacher at the Bomsey Church of Christ.
Oh,
So I have a very great affinity for Stephen Osu.
it's a very common name, actually.
Yes, it is. It is. How's the RTI Commission this morning?
The RTI Commission is doing well. It's doing everything within its power to fulfill its mandate under the RTI Act.
And for people who don't know the RTI Commission, what is your mandate? Where are you located? How do people contact you?
So the RTI Commission's mandate is to promote, to protect, to monitor, and to enforce a constitutional right, which is the right to information, as enshrined under Article 21, Clause 1F of the 1992 Constitution. That is our mandate. We are to promote that constitutional right. We are to protect it. We are to monitor. We are to enforce that constitutional right of access to information. So anybody who needs information from any public institution, when I talk about public institution, it even extends to cover private organizations or institutions. Anybody who needs information from any of these institutions and goes there and does not get the desired results, the RTI Commission is there to assist to get that information for the person. We are located at Jowolu, just behind the street behind the JCB Bank.
Yeah.
That makes it easier.
Yeah. I want to understand this very well. You said you work on both public and private institutions.
Yes.
So Wobeti and Sons Company Limited. If I want information from Wobeti and Sons, DJ Wobeti and Sons, and I apply, I go to them and they don't give it to me, I can come to the RTI Commission and compel a private businessman to give me information.
So for now, I'll be very cautious in answering this question. Though when you look at the law, the RTI law, it makes mention of public institution.
Okay.
Information held by public institution. And then the law goes on to define what public institution is for purposes of access to information.
Okay.
So let us always keep that in mind.
Okay.
Public institution for purposes of access to information. Under Section 84, it says public institution includes private organization or institution that either receives public resources or performs a public function.
Okay, I get it.
So far, that is what we've been working with. But the law also makes mention of relevant private body. And for the relevant private body, Section 84 defines it as a body that has been included on the list of private institutions that the law should apply to.
Okay.
So the relevant private bodies will come into existence when the LI is passed.
Okay.
But we've been working on the LI for some years now, and we have a tall list of relevant private institutions.
I thank you so much for this clarification, because when you mentioned public and private, I was a bit confused there. That
So
if,
could you
if,
see
I'm, if
if
I'm
we-
running my business devoid of any public engagement, and somebody wants to see into
Let me delve a bit into it, because we've had several instances of disagreement with the position taken by the Commission. So for now, in the absence of the LI, we have still been implementing the Act using this definition of public institution under Section 84. Public institution includes private organization or institution that either receives public resource or performs a public function. Now, the Act is silent on what constitutes a public resource. It is also silent on what constitutes a public function. So over the years, the Commission has, through some of its decisions, tried to put a definition to what, in the mind of the Commission, constitutes a public function or a public resource, taking into account transparency and accountability issues. Okay, so we have said that when we talk about a public function, for instance, it is any activity that benefits the public. Okay, we've intentionally put that expansive definition on public function just so that a lot more institutions, private institutions, can be roped in. But at the end of the day, we are not talking about coming to take any investment of a private institution. We are talking about ensuring accountability and transparency.
Yeah.
In as much as you have an interface with the public, okay, why shouldn't the public be able to exact some transparency or accountability from you?
So for example, there is the Ghana Enterprises Agency.
Yes.
And my brother and colleague Winston has been talking about it, that we give a lot of grants and public money to a lot of private enterprises,
Yes.
startups and all those things. Yes or nobody has come to account to us how these grants have changed the face of business, how these businesses have been able to grow, employment and all those things for the purposes of which we gave the grant. So in this instance, we can write to seek information on all these businesses that took our public grants and seek to know where they are as businesses, whether they just spent the money or they invested it for the purpose for which it was given.
So the grant was given by the GEA,
Which is a state agency.
which is a state agency.
Using
So I believe you
public
can get
funds.
that information even from the GEA.
Okay.
You don't just give money without following up to see how the money has been applied.
Yeah.
But if you want to not only get answers from the GEA, but also target these private companies or institutions that have taken the grants, you look at the definition. Okay. Would you say that they are doing an activity that can be assimilated as public function? Then if that is so, then the Right to Information Act under Section 84 says they can be considered public institution
Okay.
for purposes of being subjected to the Act.
Okay.
Okay, so what does the business do? Per the definition we have put, any activity that benefits the public. So you are a private person, all right. You took the money, but you have invested in a business that relates to, let's say, telecommunication. Okay, you deal with the public, you serve the public. Okay, we will take that as an activity that benefits the public.
Great.
So when we come, you should be able to answer questions. And let me quicken to add. It is interesting the level of resistance we get when we try to apply the law this way, even to institutions that are traditionally known to be public institutions, but which now say that they are not subject to the Act for some technical reason, some legal reason. You know how we lawyers are. Okay, it's a bit curious because I've always been saying this. It is not as if when Kojo decides to apply to this company A, automatically company A has to give out every information. The law has circumscribed, okay, the classes of information that can be given. And in fact, we interact with right to information commissions in other jurisdictions, and their concerns have been that it seems our exemptions are too wide. Okay, so it's not as if when anybody comes to ask for information, then that information should be given. It is only when the information is not exempt. And we have a wide array of information. So what then is the problem? Yeah. Even if you are private. Okay, if you are private and I come to ask for information, that turns out to be Kojo's personal information. Section 16 says it is exempt.
Okay.
It cannot be given. So what is your problem? Okay, so let us try to embrace the law and push the frontiers of transparency and accountability, as Kweku Krobia said. He's a very good friend of mine.
My guest in the studio this morning is Mr. Stephen Owusu, head of the legal department at the RTI Commission, the Right to Information Commission. We are talking about how institutions pay penalties with your money and hide information from you. We heard Kweku.
Okay.
And the challenges that the Fourth Estate is having. And other institutions are also having the same challenges, and individuals. How is the Commission dealing with the refusal by institutions to release the requested information even after they have paid a penalty?
Okay, Kojo, let me put some context to this question so that we can have a better understanding. You know, the RTI Act gives the Commission the power to resolve complaints received from applicants for information and to make orders, including imposing administrative penalties. But the act fell short of telling the commission what to do if its orders or directives have not been complied with. Okay. So at the commission, we had that difficulty when we started, and we needed to take a bold decision to decide to go to court. And even in taking that decision, okay, we really needed to be careful by what process we were going to court. Okay, because the act is silent. The act has given the power. Okay, but the act hasn't told you what to do if somebody does not comply with your order. Eventually, we took the decision that we would go to court.
So you were given a cutlass, which you couldn't use to weed.
to sort of. But of course, that is why regulations for legislative instruments are there.
Mm-hmm.
They normally come in to fill in
The
such
voids.
voids. Okay, so we took the decision, and we had to ask ourselves, okay, so by what process are we going to court? Are we going by way of a writ? Because yes, it is a human right. Okay, so if it is about going to court for an order to enforce a directive for release of information, it is still enforcement of human rights. So that one, the laws are clear on the process you can use. But how about the administrative penalty? If you decide to go to court only to enforce your administrative penalty, would that still be taken as enforcement of human rights? We needed to judge over these issues, and eventually we decided the mode by which we would go to court. Okay, so we have been going to court since we took that decision. I think if my memory serves me right, from 2023 2024, and as we speak, we have a lot of cases in court against institutions that have failed to comply with our directives. So back to your question, what is the commission doing? That is what the commission has been doing, because that is what we can do to enforce our directives when those directives have not been complied with. And normally when we give directives, either in the form of formal determinations or summary directives, we order for the information to be released to the applicants when we have decided the information is not exempt from disclosure. And then we may also impose administrative penalty for default on the part of the state institutions. So when we go to court, these are normally the two things we ask from the court. The difficulty, listening to Kweku, the difficulty is getting to know from applicants whether they have received the information per the order we have made. Okay? Because most applicants do not get back to us. For those that come back to the commission, we keep telling them that if beyond our directive, okay, the information is not released to you, let us know. Just so that if we take the decision to go to court, we can make that part of the orders we are asking from the court against the public institution. So far, that is how the commission has been enforcing its orders that are not complied with.
Wow. And when you go to court, do you get favorable rulings?
So far, top of my head, in percentage terms, I believe we've had not less than 95% success.
How many cases have you taken to court so far?
I cannot
Is it
top of
between,
my head because we are so violent.
0 to 100? Is it up to 100 cases?
We are not up to 100, but we've gone past 50.
Wow.
Surely. Yeah.
You've gone past 50.
Yes, and we are so violent.
And what's the percentage of these cases you are taking to court compared to the ones that have been resolved by you? So, for example, if you give orders, what's the percentage of institutions that have complied with your orders compared to those who do not comply?
So, Kojo, that is a difficulty I mentioned. Because normally we take the decision to go to court when the administrative penalty, in case we impose administrative penalty, when the administrative penalty has not been paid. And at the commission level, we allow reasonable length of time. Okay, so at times we intentionally delay, wait for institutions to comply, until we realize that they are bent on not complying, and then we take the decision to go to court. As I said, the difficulty is getting to know if the information has been released to the applicant. So what we do now is that when the decision is taken to go to court, we then try to get in touch with the applicant to ask if the information has been released pursuant to the order we've already made. And if the answer is that the information has not been released, then we make it one of the orders we are asking from the court. Okay. But having said that, we have also been encouraging applicants on their own, to take steps to enforce our decision. As I said, the Act is silent on what should have happened in case the Commission's orders are not complied with. This is a decision we took. So we also encourage applicants to take steps to enforce the orders we make. And if they so wish to make us interested parties, we are ready. As I speak, I think last week we received one such court process, which is a step taken by an applicant pursuant to a decision we have made to sue the institution and then make the RTI Commission an interested party. And when we are made interested party, what it means is that we have the opportunity to go in and support the applicant to get the court order for the release of the information. So it is difficult for me to tell the number of decisions that have been complied with by way of release of information, because the applicants normally do not get back to us to let us know until we are going to court, and then we find out.
But are they not enjoined to let you know? Because if they come to you to trigger the RTI law to get information, and they get the information, there should be a process or a system within your RTI system to get them to let you know that they've received the information. So you don't expend resources chasing institutions or even going to the applicants to find whether they've received the information.
Yes. So what the previous board, for instance, decided in response to this difficulty was for us to then include in our decision when we were making orders directed at public institutions to release information, that when you release the information to the applicant, keep the commission in copy. Okay, so I think from around 2024 up to now, that is always how we couch our orders. When you release the information, keep the commission in copy, so that we can keep track of whether the information has been released or not. And it's unfortunate, but in almost all the instances, when we decide to go to court, the information has not been released to the applicant. So we then make it part of the orders we are asking from the court.
Wow. So you said over 95% of the cases you take to courts, you get rulings in your favor.
Yes.
And you said you go to court to enforce the administrative fines.
Yes.
And in that process, you also add another order to get the court to compel the institutions
to release
the information. Have you had an institution release? What's the fastest turnaround time for information released through your process?
Are you talking about when we end up in court, or
no? When you give your ruling to any of the institutions?
When we give our ruling to any of the institutions, because initially we were not compelling the institutions to keep us in copy. We couldn't know. Okay. But now, I think a good number of institutions are complying. A good number of institutions, keep sending us.
They keep you in copy.
Yes. Keep sending us information about they releasing. At times, because we already request for the information requested by the applicant for purposes of examining to determine whether it is exempt or not, we already have the information. And based on our examination, we then make the order. So it does not become necessary for the public institution to keep us in copy again. They only need to inform us that pursuant to your order, we have given the information to the applicant. So they normally would send an email, okay, informing us that, yes, we have released the information to the applicant. And in terms of the time, let me be careful here. Because I'm not in charge of the commission's email. Okay, but but I think it shouldn't be more than 2 weeks, 3 weeks after our decision.
Okay.
Yeah, if my memory serves me right.
Okay.
For those institutions that are willing. And it is refreshing, having said that, it is refreshing to know that a lot of the institutions are now beginning to understand the RTI law. Compared to when we started with implementation in 2021, okay, a lot more institutions are becoming forthcoming. Okay.
If you say a lot more institutions are becoming forthcoming,
Yes.
if we are to talk about compliance, for example, do you have over 50% of the institutions complying immediately? There is an RTI action issued against them.
Over 50%. Yes, it could be the case.
Okay.
It could be the case. Only that the numbers keep fluctuating. When you get hold of our annual reports, okay, we give detailed reports on these activities of the commission. So when you get hold of the annual reports for the previous years, 2022, 2023, 2024.
Have they been released publicly?
The
annual report for 2025, has it been released?
Oh, no. So for 2025, we have up to 30th June. That is what the Act says. Okay, for it to be presented in Parliament.
Okay.
Unless it is presented in Parliament, see, it has not been released.
Okay.
So we are almost done with the annual report for 2025. Okay, I'm very much part.
So we are on course.
Yes, we are on course. In fact, we've never defaulted.
Okay.
We've never defaulted. Last year, because of the transition, okay, even with that, we did not default. We made sure we kept to the timeline within the Act, which is 30th June. So we made sure the reports were ready and sent through the Minister for Government Communications to Parliament. If my memory serves me, I think last year, the last Friday before the 30th was going to be around, was it 28th or 27th?
That's
June?
when it went through.
No, so we made sure that the copies would be ready, sent to the Minister in charge of Government Communications, and then he sent to Parliament. Okay, and even with that, we took steps to follow up to ensure that it would get on the order paper for the day, so that it would be presented. I know Parliament is master of its own activities there. Rules.
There are some people who have said that officers of the institutions that are refusing to release information and are being fined should be held for causing financial loss to the states, because some of these officers are not acting because they will end up using our own money to pay for the fines. What's the view of the RTI Commission when it comes to this fine? Should the officers be made to pay with their own money, or it should be coming from the institutional budgets?
Yes, we've had this issue coming back every now and then. I remember when we started in 2021, under the previous board and executive secretary, I was with the executive secretary when we paid a visit to the audit service. I think we had a meeting with the head of performance audit at that time, and that was the main subject. We even at that time, when we were beginning with the implementation, we envisaged that difficulty, that public officers may incur debt for the institutions to pay. So the conversation centered around the possibility of the audit service during times of audit to see those officers by whose act or conduct the institutions had to pay administrative penalties, so that they could be surcharged. That was what the conversation centered on. And this was way back 2021, okay, when we hadn't even fully immersed ourselves in the implementation. So we've always had that in mind. And down the line, this issue has always been cropping up. So we believe having in place an arrangement that would make individuals, be surcharged, or individuals be made personally responsible to pay administrative penalties if it is established that they are the cause of the default on the part of the institution. I believe that will be in order. And let me add, we've been working on the regulations meant for legislative instruments for some time now. The regulations nearly passed in 2024, but for the few skirmishes in Parliament, yes, we did everything. We did all the consultations. We engaged the parliamentary committee on subsidiary legislation. We finalized. I think at that time the chairman was the current Attorney General, Dr. Ayine. And everything was done. We're waiting for the report, his report to be laid, and then to have it passed. And then it was getting to the elections. We remember the hold up in Parliament because of the court cases. That is why it couldn't pass. But I know there is a provision in the draft that sought to correct the difficulty we have regarding the payment of administrative penalties. Yes, I know there's a provision in there.
Great.
But of course, there's a new board. We are trying to take steps to have the draft relayed. Currently, we are trying to see how to take the new board through the draft, so that if they also have inputs to make, they can make the inputs before we get it back to the Attorney General, and then to lay it before Parliament.
Great. Stephen Osu is the head of legal department at the RTI Commission. Earlier I heard Kweku Krobia as well from Media Foundation for West Africa. And our conversation has really been about how institutions are paying penalties with our own money and hiding information. And from Kweku's submissions, a lot is going on. And I'm happy with the work the RTI Commission is also doing. I know they have a lot of challenges, but they are still pushing through to ensure there is accountability. My joy is that Curruption Watch is back, and we are going to have a lot of these conversations in the coming weeks. Yes. So we'll try to unpack everything here on the show and get the accountability we want for the people of Ghana. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
You're welcome, Kojo, and thank you for having us. Our doors are always open, and we are ready to come and engage with the public to understand more about what the Commission is doing, and to particularly understand more about right to information and what people can do to access information.
And I'll be visiting your office in Jolu very soon. Now, before we wrap up, I'd like to say a big thank you to our partners, the European Union, for leading this and funding this. I'd also like to say a big thank you to CDD Ghana, Transparency International, Ghana Integrity Initiative, Transparency International, which used to be Ghana Integrity Initiative, the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, and the Africa Center for International Law and Accountability. You can follow Corruption Watch on Facebook, Corruption Watch Ghana, Twitter, Corruption Watch or CW Ghana, Instagram, Corruption Watch _GH, YouTube, Corruption Watch Ghana, and you can visit the CDD website, cdd.org/Corruption Watch Ghana CW. The hotline is 055 22 00033. If you have any information for Corruption Watch, you can call the hotline or WhatsApp 055 22 00033. Email address is sm@cw-ghana.org, and the hashtag is Ghana Bre. Thank you, Stephen, once again for joining us.
Yeah, before I leave, we can be contacted on all our social media handles.
That is the RTI Commission.
Yes, just type RTI
Ghana.
Yes, Ghana. Okay, we will pop up.
Okay.
On LinkedIn, on Facebook, on X, even on TikTok. We are there.
RTI is on TikTok.
We are very carried.
But I hope you are not dancing on TikTok.